Hey everyone, this is Talkative Carl back again for another comic book spoiler review. We're going to be covering a lot of Iron Man uh, in the upcoming weeks. I just covered season 1 of Iron Man Armored Adventures, as well as the first Iron Man movie, and now I'm covering an Iron Man comic book story, which you can check out my previous videos on youtube.com/talkativecarl. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, if you want more content down the line. Yeah, Demon in a Bottle. I haven't personally read it until recently, but I definitely over time knew of the story because of the reviewers and who were talking about it. So, I, uh, been reading it for the past, like, it didn't take me a week, but it's just, I've been trying to get through other stuff. And so it took me a bit of time, but I finally just wrapped it up yesterday. And yeah, like I said, one of the most memorable Iron Man stories, because Iron Man historically has been known to be a recovering alcoholic. Now, Iron Man 2 tried to, well, Jon Favreau wanted to go more in depth with this story because it is, if you can tell a lot, and people will be so engaged and understand, with anybody who's suffering from like substance abuse of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be alcoholism, but at the time, during like it was still phase 1 at the time, and of course, currently right now, after getting after phase 2 leading up to now, when MCU was proving itself through phase 1, you couldn't necessarily delve too deep in something so serious of a matter. So Jon Favreau couldn't really tell exactly what he wanted with Demon in a Bottle, but it's sprinkled here and there in Iron Man 2, which is like a shame because like I said, it's one of the most classic Iron Man stories and cemented uh, one of the biggest issues Iron Man suffered from. I won't say continue to suffer from, because you're not saying you get over alcoholism, but he's done the work. And the only time I remember Iron Man breaking that was after the this Thor event. They kind of like spread through like the Marvel universe, where it's like I think it was his uncle. I forgot what the event was called, but Thor's uncle came back from the dead or something. He sends out these hammers that took over the bodies of certain Marvel characters, uh, pretty much to wreak havoc. I think the Thing was one of them who picked one of those up. I can't recall 100% exactly, but after the event and it was over and the battle was won, it was so grueling, and we put everybody through their paces. Iron Man, it was the first time in a long time that Iron Man finally broke his sobriety for once, because he finally got himself a bottle and I went through some shit. I need a drink, at least to celebrate, at least because you went through I hesitate to say I give him a pass on that, but it's like I understand because I want to reread that at some point. That event, forgot what that thing was called. That event was called, but anyway. Oh my god, I forgot about to put on my slides. 1 second here. Uh, about a moment. I usually forget to do this. Don't know why. Luckily, it's only a few things here for the slides, so won't take up too much time. It's only 7 slides, so. Uh, all right then. Here we go. Sorry about that. But yeah. Now, currently, right now, Iron Man stores right now. He's back to this particular model of a suit because in the past couple of years, at this point, at least a year and a half, him and Batman, respectively, have been like, you know, they're not broke, but their wealth has been significantly reduced. I think large part, in large part, is because of the cultural zeitgeist that people like have issue with like the rich and powerful and like not really doing much with their money and like exploiting and blase blase blase. So they kind of like fed into the comics to where like people like Iron Man and Batman does you even in real life, you know, there are a fair share of rich people who use their money for uh good deeds, but just like I guess it's not enough or not highly enough to warrant like certain masses. Not that I have any kind of uh love for like certain rich and powerful people at all, but I don't think it's fair to like kind of like put it on into the comments where like oh, because when it after it happened, Tony Stark was in the hospital, and when he got the news about the drop in his wealth, he makes some kind of comment about like uh, it's very PC, but it's like some comment about like people that have don't want to deal with like the rich throwing their weight around and getting away with certain things and blah 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 blah. Obviously echoing uh certain, not saying like the wrong people, but like certain people that's kind of taking like the like I'm a progressive. I lean left too, but at a certain point you kind of take it too far. But I digress. But it's kind of like they kind of eat into like the comics, whether it's good or bad things, up to you to decide how that is. But yeah, he's back into this like comic, this costume currently. Uh, so glad we see where it's really like that it's time to shine in history. So Iron Man is dealing with like some issues. Shield is starting to buy up certain stock of Stark International, and uh, which is kind of like doubly insulting because you thought not just Shield is like Nick Fury, like thought you my freaking friend. I was surprised you would do something like that to me because prior to him being Iron Man, Shield always been like supplied by fancy new weapons by Stark International or Stark Industries as it once was called. But since Stark decided like no more weapons for anybody, they decided to just okay, I'll just buy up Stark, International ourselves, and then like get it straight from the horse's mouth. So while Tony is dealing with that, he's he's drinking obviously quite a bit. He's always known to have alcohol every once in a while, in his early exception. But this is where it's really hitting home how like the stewardess is telling like he asked for like a particular drink and the stewardess asked like do you think you already had 3, sir? And I was like, you sure did. So like bring me another. By the way, the story is written by Dave Michelinie and art by John Romita Jr. So, just so you know. And while on this plane ride, people know it's like a tank like an army tank flying towards them. It hits part of the plane. Tony, goes to the bathroom to suit up because he got the suitcase, not the suitcase armor, but like a suitcase with the armor pieces that he had to sort of individually put on, which obviously takes time. Which I think that's a detriment to him because I like even at the very least should have like the suitcase armor at the very least because that way it can be relatively quicker to put it on rather than trying to put on piece by piece. The things don't even fly to him to make it the armor automatically. He, like I said, he had to manually apply them. So he, he goes out to make sure that the plane doesn't like crash directly into the water, and some U.S. vessel comes by to pick up the survivors from the plane crash, and he goes to speak with the general, asking like what the heck's going on, and the general there telling Iron Man, we've been having a tough time with this old geezer who won't get off his land, his island where nearby they're testing like certain explosions, and Iron Man goes to check it out, and he sees like Namor, the Submariner, who's been helping this old guy. Namor owes this guy his life because Namor, in a separate panel, you see what led Namor to be in this predicament. He was swimming along the coast, noticed that there was some kind of like a leakage into this ocean. He needs he caused like a sea cave in, whatever, to cover all that up and deal with that. But some of that stuff got to him and it caused him to like pass out. He fell to the surface. He was rescued by this old guy who nursed him back to health. And so as repayment, he makes sure that this guy's not moved from his property. And so Iron Man and Namor duke it out because Namor is kind of like an arrogant prick half the time anyway, and start dealing with that. A mysterious person is manipulating his armor, causing it to shut down in certain areas. Like as he's tussling with Namor in the water, is like because like sometimes it wasn't drawn that way unless it's specifically meant to be seen. Like these eyes covered plexiglass thing over his eyes and mouth or his helmet keeps him from drowning in the water. But all that goes away. Now he's like his body's his suit's filling up with water, and he's about to drown until Namor rescues him, saying like, I'm not gonna kill you when you're down like this. I'm gonna wait till you recover and then we can finish the fight. Meanwhile, at the same time, Rhodey and this I want to say like one. Personally, I say it's a one-off character because I never seen this woman like outside of this ever. But her name was like Beth. It's supposed to be some kind of like a liaison from this government or whatever. And she and Rhodey go to try to help Tony, who they believe is like a part of the people in the plane who's like crashed in the ocean. And then they get picked up by those same soldiers, and they come to realize these guys are not soldiers because she tried to give them her code number or something, and they're not responding to it the way like a military personnel would properly respond to. Then she quickly picks up on, yeah, they're not who they, because they claim to be the Navy. They're not the Navy. And in like a weird transition, kind of sort of transition, they in like a look like a med bay or something like that, because they're getting treated, and they run out of the room, and you enter like look like the office of one of the guys who apparently, like I said, not part of the Navy. There with Roxxon, another Iron Man kind of like Rose Gallery kind of. Roxxon is kind of like almost, it could be almost anybody's like nemesis, but they can easily be like a rival to like Stark with like company versus company kind of situation. Uh, uh, and the guy who's supposed to be the general works for Roxxon and explains to them that they've got word that near this old man's island, there's supposed to be some mineral deposits for vibranium nearby that they want to mine, but they have a tough time because Namor is keeping this guy protected, and they can't really get close enough to it in order to do what they need to do. And they only help like those plane crash survivors because they don't want to raise suspicion for any of the actual official police or military personnel. So while this is going on, Namor, the old man explains to Iron Man, who is recovering thanks to his the old man's like little generator thing, outside generator thing, powering up Tony's suit. It regales them about how like he and his wife, to escape the hustle and bustle of the city, picked up their stuff and moved to this island and built a life here. She eventually passed away, and he's living out the rest of his life like an old hermit, pretty much. But then he tells them that nobody ever came by, no official, no military, nobody came by. They just started bombing and ruining everything, and it's trying to scare me off my place. So now, like, Tony understands, okay, I've been sold a bill of goods. And then him and Namor fly back to the ship where, like, the general realized that jig is up. So now they're trying to fire upon Iron Man and Namor, which obviously does not work. So they took down these guys, and the proper authorities show up eventually. And Namor and Iron Man say their goodbyes because, despite everything, Namor sees Iron Man as like an honorable man. He had like a slight little history of all like this. Iron Man's origins, don't really need to rehash it. He was captured by terrorist groups. Some shrapnel landing in his heart. He made like a arc reactor or pacemaker, depending on the timeline, and made himself an Iron Man suit, busted out of there, saved himself, and became a hero and one of the founders of the Avengers. And most of these like arcs, there's like at least two different books out of this like omnibus here, are very because you can easily treat like Tony Stark as like a spy type of thriller kind of thing if you wanted to. Like you literally have like a one of the books called Casino Fatale, obviously like a pun on Casino Royale. And of course, during this time period, during the 60s, I guess Timothy Dalton would be like the James Bond of the time. So Stark and Bethany, like, they're starting to become like a thing. But, oh, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Tony's starting to get like issues with the armor, whereas like, because this mysterious person is like fooling around remotely disabling certain pieces of the armor, whereas like now he's like can't stay afloat in the air, and he's running diagnostics and tests on his armor and him using the armor, just making sure like, okay, if there's anything wrong with it, the computer says nothing's wrong with it, but he decides for right now he's gonna like leave it be. Uh, until if something else goes on, he has to like, probably like start from scratch with like a new armor just to be sure. So him and Beth goes to Atlantic City to uh, get to know each other, kind of thing. And even she mentions about like because every once in a while certain individuals, even a couple that you don't expect to bring this up, all point out like, okay, don't you think you had enough, kind of thing, like, or like, dude, it's 9 in the morning, kind of that kind of thing. You can tell that this guy got like like a he's starting to get like a drinking problem. Then while at Atlantic City, Iron Man, while he's trying to enjoy himself, the place gets uh, robbed by Blizzard, Whiplash, and the Melter, who are known to be Iron Man villains, which they definitely need to shine in the comics, because I just reviewed the first season of Iron Man Armored Adventures, and they get like some significant shine from a show that came out around like 2010. And it's like, you know, and it are actual armors, because this was made in the 60s, so I give it some slack. But they look like just regular latex costumes, but they do wacky stuff, and they call it, they're suits, but they make it seem like they're like in the show there are actual suits, because Blizzard actually has like a big bulky kind of suit that shoot ice blasts and ice rockets and mines and stuff like that. Here he got like a little, just like a latex costume that looks like a latex costume that shoot ice beams through his fingers, and he just call it tech. Like I said, I gotta cut it some slack because the time period it was being created. So Iron Man easily makes me out of these guys, because they're really like not much of a challenge for Iron Man, who fought these guys quite a few times before. But then once everything's all wrapped up, because Bethany looking at Iron Man, who doesn't know that he is Iron Man, who he's Tony Stark, chastise him like, ain't you supposed to be Tony Stark's bodyguard? Where is Tony Stark? Ain't you supposed to be guarding his body? And of course, early you see like Tony Stark like running away just to find a suit because he doesn't want to let people know who he is. Iron Man sitting there comes back at her. It's like, oh, I'm sorry. I guess me saving a room full of people from dangerous super criminals isn't good enough for you, you stuck up bitch. Who's only gonna be here for this one particular adventure. And this is weird is that you don't see Pepper Potts around here during this arc, which you would think she would have been like us. She should be like the Beth in this. What Beth is doing is what Pepper should be in place to do. Because I know who Beth is. Everybody knows who Pepper Potts is. Because, she should have been around since the very beginning. At least should have. I'm not 100% sure that she was created around the same time as Tony Stark, but she should. Because she's pretty much like the MJ for Iron Man. So like I said, like they, dealt with like all those criminals and they get hauled away to jail. And Iron Man gets a request from this guy, Pethans or Perkins, who tells Tony that he requires like Iron Man's services, like on behalf of like us, because he's like a PR guy, on behalf of Stark International. It'd be great to get this foreign dignitary to meet Iron Man, because he's a huge Iron Man fan, and so he goes there to the UN. It's supposed to be some kind of big summit, and this mysterious guy still futzing around with Iron Man's suit remotely, as like Iron Man has his hand on his back, and it's kind of like about to take a picture, photo op, and stuff like that. the mysterious guy sets off Iron Man's repulsor and just completely, like, you would think, some people don't think like, oh, like Marvel and DC comics can get like, you know, gratuitous in this main continuity, you know, not counting any Elseworlds or what if stuff. But, you know, if you wanted to, they can get, kind of course, you don't get like bloody, but you expect blood to be spurting in some fashion. But I guess it's hot, it's cauterized everything on the way out. But he's blasting a repulsor right through the guy's backside, which is like, it kind of like, I feel bad because this guy was like fanboying out. And it's like, oh, like, obviously he won like a personal Iron Man autograph, but he was like, oh, my niece wanted like an autograph. What's her name? Like, he gives like a guy's name. Oh, he is Devon, like something like that. It's like, I was like, it was funny. That's probably one of my favorite scenes out of the entire like this adventure. I love that because like, who among us have not acted like that? Maybe not, because you'll be upfront about like, yeah, like it's for me, or if it's for your kid, you want to like make it up. But just the whole fanboying out, you can relate. So now, in front of all these live feeds and like in front of thousands of people, just witnessed Iron Man brutally murdering somebody on live television. So now the cops are running up to him and Beth, grilling him and stuff like that. And it's like, and Iron Man, and I kind of like this part. I'm not sure what about you, what you would think, but I like this part where Iron Man was like, look, he's telling the police, like, which I know seems very like privileged, and it is, and to an extent, but if you know Tony Stark, like, you would think you would know Tony Stark. It's like, he obviously would come some slack because, like, as he puts it to the cops, like, look, guys, I, this is a complete mouth, something's wrong, something going on with my suit, lately. I did not intentionally kill this guy. You got to believe me, and the cops, of course, let him on his way, but they encourage him to, like, have his, like, suit impounded at the very least, which, under the circumstances, because they didn't address at no point, I think Bethany bring it up, but it's like, okay, impound the suit, but you still got to bring the guy inside in for holding and questioning, which they never do that part. Obviously, you can't. But one of the cops bring up is like, okay, like, you bring in your suit at the very least so we can impound it, because like, you done so much, because at this point he saved like the city and the world with the Avengers 1,000 times. I guess he earns this little bit of a grace. But Bethlehem is like, because they next thing you see, like, Tony in a meeting with a bunch of people trying to wrangle like what the hell went on and everything like that, with the mayor and everything like that. And Bethlehem is like giving, like, Tony shit, and like, of course they having like a back and forth, like, what, you don't know shit kind of thing, because like obviously Tony's already like had like a fair share of drinking, so he knows as he's saying it that he's saying something that he won't know, he can't take back. But basically, like, because Bethany just like, it starts like, like like yeah, there's more than mere diplomacy involved here. A man's been murdered and we don't even know the murderer's real name. Oh, should we take Iron Man's word? And Tony's like, you don't have to. You got my word. I'll vouch for Iron Man. And I'm like, oh yeah. You have to vouch. You have to vouch for him. He's your employee, but a man's been killed. And Tony Stark replies, a man you were supposed to protect. Look, Bethany, I'm tired, and I'm tired, and I'm frazzled, and I'm sick of your blaming my bodyguard for a job you botched. We both got stakes in this game, lady. So why don't you just drop it? So yeah, and kind of like goodwill of these two, like, it was trying to have bubbled to the surface is pretty much being deflated at this point. So like this whole deal is really putting like Tony Stark out of sorts. He's not shaving. He's disheveled. He goes to the Avengers, and of course, they have to, because they don't know who Tony Stark is Iron Man at this point in time. So they're saying like, Iron Man can't be a part of the Avengers after what he just did, and they believe that Iron Man wouldn't be like a full blown murderer, but it's like for right now, until things get cleared up, they can't he can't be part of the team right now. And Tony Stark understands this. And then he goes to Captain America and asks, like, hey, since my bodyguard is like not gonna be around to do his job under the circumstances, I'm gonna have to be able to defend myself. Can you teach me some moves? And you see this nice little moment which I think is probably the first time we get to witness this, that it should be a thing for Tony Stark to learn how to defend himself. So for some hours, for at least a few hours, Steve teaches Tony how to defend himself, at least in the short amount of window that they have. And he points out, like, you might not be able to fight Muhammad Ali, but you can easily take on some, group of drunk thugs easily. Which is more than enough. And you see that applied on several occasions through this adventure, especially when he goes, cross country, try to figure things out. And he goes to Scott Lang, who has a cameo in this, to where he uses, asks for his assistance in order to figure out what's going on. Because Whiplash mentions the word hammer, as you know, the mysterious guy is just a hammer. He's been using like some remote control computer to fool around with the signal, at least the circuitry connected to the signal, to mess around with Tony Stark's suit. So Scott infiltrates Rikos Island, interrogates one of the thugs to get the name, and so Tony, along with Rhodes, who's like a ride-along, goes down to Morocco, or Monte Carlo, I think, and try to find this hammer guy. And once again, another kind of like jet-setting thing, very James Bondish. So, after through some like a fight breaks out, they finally Tony finally meets the man behind it all, Justin Hammer, who the guy he ended up killing, Tony ended up accidentally killing, was supposed to Hammer wanted him to be his Hammer wanted to be his benefactor to get richer and buy Hammer products. But since the guy was such a huge Iron Man fan, he decided to like work with Tony Stark instead, and that's why Tony sent out Iron Man to do press runs and take pictures with this guy and what have you. So this is kind of like a retribution in a way on both fronts. So after Rhodes gets knocked out, gets picked up by the Monte Carlo police, who he's trying to explain that he works for Tony Stark and he's in danger. Meanwhile, while being held captive by Hammer, Tony, and this is probably a funny moment, Tony calls out to the guard outside the door saying like, "Yo, there's no alcohol in here," and the guy's like, Hammer's senses, said indicated that you're pretty sloshed already. He wanted you sober for the next phase of the plan. And it's kind of, you see Tony getting like a little agitated because like, oh really? Oh, the bad guy is now telling me I got a drinking problem. That part was funny to me. Like, the bad guys are telling you got a drinking problem. There's an issue. But he managed to trick the guard to coming in by making this big commotion. Water spilled all over the place from this water jug, and he breaks a lamp, and he and like and like the thug is like, "You wouldn't." Yes, I would. Tosses the thing on the ground and electrocutes the guy. He mentions Tony quickly mentions, obviously for the readers, like, it wasn't enough water to kill you, but it would definitely take you out of out of off the board for a while. So Tony goes to the computer room. Excuse me. He literally utilizes a belt that turns into a grappling hook. Like I said, it's very freaking James Bond, and he hooks it and climbs off the side of the building and lands in the room where his suitcase is holding his armor pieces. He takes some grenades, blows up the computer that's remotely controlling his suit. Don't understand why Hammer just can't build another, but scratch that. Tony can easily probably figure out to counteract any kind of signal that's trying to remotely control the armor without his permission. So all that has been neutralized. So Hammer is just like outraged. It's like, he's escaped. And he sends out all these goons who are half and half Spider-Man's bad guys mixed with they're all like C and D list villains, but half of them are Spider-Man's bad guys and the other half are Iron Man's bad guys. But Iron Man, and this is like literally like a group of like a dozen or so. And Tony Stark easily mopped the floor with all these guys. And it's like and you got like Porcupine, Constrictor, of course Melter and Whiplash. You got this woman like Maneater, never heard of her before. And you got this guy who I thought was Frogman, but is Leapfrog, which I think is part of me feels like they're one and the same, to be fair. But Stark deals with all of them. And I think Hammer ended up getting away because they literally on like a sailing island. You think it's like a stagnant island, but it rises up and floats because it's pretty much like a sailing island. So yeah, Hammer ends up getting away, and Iron Man's reputation is cleared, but it's bittersweet because there's a little girl who dropped a doll, outside the press conference, and Iron Man picks it up, try to hand it back to her, and she freaks out, like, "Don't let him get me, mommy! Like I saw him murder that man," and like this kind of like really, like the bad guys are stopped. Iron Man's reputation is supposed to be clear, but it's like people still saw you murder a man, and that still's haunting him. He took a guy's life, and he has to live with that. And this obviously made Tony Stark want to drink more, obviously, and because he's so drunk and messing up a date meant for him and Bethany because he got like some addresses mixed up. He thought he got stood up, so he went out, got more drunk, hung out with his girl, this strange woman, saying, "You want to see all my armor, like Iron Man armors and blah blah blah." Like he's all drunk and he's like dizzy and all this other stuff. And Jarvis, human Jarvis, in this trying to like tell him like all that stuff is classified, so I don't think it's a good idea for you to do that. And he snaps at Jarvis and like, you work for me. And I was like, you just stay in your place kind of thing. He's like, "Yes, sir." And he storms off. And of course, Tony Stark wakes up in a hangover with Jarvis standing in front of him, handing him, his resignation because he can't work here, given everything that's going on with Tony. and it's like really hitting home that Tony's like having like a serious problem, but it's like he's not dealing with it or choosing to ignore it, and he decides, okay, Tony Stark's life is in shambles. And I like this dialogue where he points out like so many, because it kind of like part of me kind of feels like it's kind of like a nod to Spider-Man, like Spider-Man No More, where he says, "I want to be Peter Parker permanently. I don't want to be Spider-Man no more." Tony decides to do a flip effect. It was like, "I don't want to be Tony Stark anymore. I want to be Iron Man 24/7." So he decides to get sloshed some more, then flies out, breaks through the window without even bothering to open it. He's like, "Oops, I forgot to open the window." And he flies out, "I'm Iron Man, yeah!" And he flies out. There's like a train that was derailed and got this tanker full of like chlorine they haven't ruptured, but they're trying to make sure they move it before it ruptures because cause some kind of like contamination. And then Iron Man tried to help, but he didn't calculate the weight of the tanker, and he caused it to fall, and there was like a leakage, and cops are pissed now, so he has to fly out, and he flies back home. He's like, "Great, I'm not good as Iron Man either," and blah blah blah. And then he gets confronted by Beth, who tells him the story about how like she had this a former husband who was suffering through substance abuse himself, which was pills in his case, and she didn't stick around because as his wife, she's supposed to have been there for him, and she kind of turned her back toward him, didn't actually stay and help, and then he ended up having like a car accident, which the police doesn't know if it was because of stress, for work related stress, because I think he was probably losing his company and finances and stuff like that. Either it was the pills or it might have been a heart attack, but either way, he wasn't together. And so she doesn't want that happening to Tony, and she like, "No, I'm staying with you. I'm staying with you through this. I want to make sure you come out this on the other end okay." Like I said, it's supposed to be like, I think this is more ideal for Pepper Potts to be a part of this rather than some one time off. At least I think she's like a one time off kind of character, because I don't see her. I haven't seen her in anything else outside of this. And like, I don't care for Beth. This is like a very Pepper Potts kind of thing. So she helps him after he hears the story. He drops everything and he reaches out to her and says like, "Help me," which is obviously a first step that you obviously admit you have a problem. So she helps him through his like sobriety, well, like not sobriety, well, sobriety, but like the withdrawal symptoms, all the good and the bad parts of it. Then he goes, after he's clear, he goes to find Jarvis, apologize to him, and like and we want him back. Jarvis says, "I will come back definitely, but like after I can attend to my sick mother back home, because I had to sell 2 of my shares of the Stark Stark International stock in order to help pay for the medical bills." And he went to this creepy like loan shark kind of guy, Tony Stark, like, "I need those 2 shares in order to help like give him, at least be able to be majority shareholder of my company." So he goes to this shark, who he tries to hand him a water cast to buy those stocks back, but he's like, "Oh, that's no good now." Okay, fine. He's Iron Man starts banging up his whole entire office until the guy finally admits that he sold them to, turns out to be Shield, and now it's like Shield now at this point in time was the majority shareholder of Stark International, which really pushes Stark to wanting to drink, but he found his resolve and like, "No, this is not what want right now. I'm going to work hard to get my company back without having alcohol as my crutch. And that's where like the story ends, and it's a good story. You know, they was telling the story. I kind of wish personally, I wish the whole alcoholism and sobriety stuff was like the main focus of the story. But of course, it's a comedy. You gotta have beat 'em up stuff. But uh, I don't think personally, I don't think like the whole hammer thing was needed. It'd be a nice. Look, sometimes the best stories uh, of like a separate comic book issue or one-off adventure or whatever is like best when it's like when it's telling something with very minimum actually superhero fights involved. Where it's like that's where I wanted like the DC comic event called Heroes in Crisis that came out a few years ago, or at least a couple of years ago, when it's supposed to have been about like all these DC heroes going to this like sanctuary where they get like some psychological help, and it went off to some kind of murder mystery where it's like it went off the rails. I did not care for it. I was looking forward to it because they was led to believe it's going to be like involving these heroes trying to go through their separate kind of traumas, and like that's what it's supposed to be about. And this is still good, but I really wish like its primary focus should be Tony Stark dealing with alcoholism and trying to recover. But and like I said, the Beth stuff didn't really care for it. Like I said, don't know why. Like I don't know if the Pepper wasn't created just yet at the time. But if she wasn't yet, then I guess I can understand the need for Beth in this. But she didn't offer much for me outside of she was necessary, but like you know what I mean. She didn't offer much in my opinion. It's like she's irreplaceable. You don't see Beth in anything else. I doubt you remember someone like named Beth. If you ask anybody, you remember Beth, the Iron Man supporting character? No, who the hell is Beth? You'll get that response, I guarantee it. But yeah, Demon in the Bottle, great story. Like other than like the issues that I had, great story. And look forward to next weekend some change. I just wrapped up season 1 of Iron Man Armored Adventures and the first Iron Man movie. Now covered like an Iron Man comic review. Look forward to cover Iron Man 2 movie, as well as season 2 of Iron Man Armored Adventures. And then the next Iron Man comic review I'll be doing is Armor Wars. So look forward to that. Thank you all for joining me. Don't forget to leave a like and comment, show your support. And leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about Demon in the Bottle, if you read it before. If you haven't, definitely give it a look-see. You should be able to find it online to be able to read it free online. But yeah, I will see you guys more than likely tomorrow for more video game walkthroughs, for more God of War and multiverses, and wrapping up case number 5 for Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy. So look forward to that. So yeah, take care, and I'll see you guys.